Okay, so let's get into this Developer Direct online session. This one's going to be on Visual Live Bindings, which we're going to spend the next half an hour talking through. This is episode 2 of 6 in season 4, and obviously last week we had a great demo from Pavel looking at FireDAC and a number of the capabilities around the very fast native database storage that we have within FireDAC, including local SQL support and a number of other features. Today we're going to obviously be looking through Visual Live Bindings, and then next week we're going to be through to language features. In a couple of weeks' time we'll be looking at language features, followed on by cloud clients, the new BAS components, which are very, very powerful indeed. And then one I know a lot of you are beginning to talk about already, which is the app tethering, before we then look at the final session of going mobile and some of the mobile support. So as of last week, we're going to still be focusing a lot on the VCL through these sessions, but obviously everything we have a look at here is very applicable for the FM application framework as well as the VCL. So there's 3 ways that you can make the most of this session. So please do get involved. Tweet us at Embarcadero Developer Direct, which is EMBTD Direct, or join in on the chatter with hashtag EMBTDD. If between sessions that you really want to ask us a question or get a pointer to some resource that we've not published or that you can't find easily, then do feel free to drop us an email on developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. And also, especially for you guys to support this learning series, we have set up a website, streaming.embarcadero.com, where you'll be able to get instant replay of these sessions along with the resources that we recommend that you look through and read through to help you get going with the topics that we discover and talk about each week. So today is all about Visual Live Bindings. So Visual Live Bindings were introduced in XE2. Well, Live Bindings were introduced in XE2, Visual Live Bindings in XE3. And what Live Bindings bring us is a whole new way to be able to connect our data to our objects. And you can go way far and beyond as well. One of the paradigms that database developers would be quite used to from the past is having a data set which is then linked to a data source, and then the data source linked to data-aware controls, which then tell it which field to go and look at, and that controls the link between the data set and the actual visualization layer. With Visual Live Bindings, they were introduced alongside the FM application framework, but are also there for VCL. And the key thing was that the FireMonkey framework, the FM application framework, does not support any data-aware controls. So the way you get data to those controls is by using Live Bindings. And the reason that there was this whole shift to using Live Bindings is that Live Bindings allow you to pretty much link to any control. And you can link controls to controls. You can take objects and make those your data source, which then link through to controls. So it's not just limited to data sets. So, Visual Live Bindings and the Live Bindings engine provide us a much more flexible way to be able to display and get data to the screens. Now, this is great because for developers who've been using the VCL for a while, you may have controls that you want to be able to reach, but you've never had a data-aware version. Well, guess what? Using Visual Live Bindings, you now have. If you're calling SOAP web services and you're getting a remotable object back, rather than having to write a whole load of code that links that object to the screen, you can now define up a prototype bind source and write one line of code that then binds the object or the object list to the UI at runtime. So to create Live Bindings, all you need to do is, as you see on the screen here, click on one property, draw across to the other and drop down. Now there's a number of layers. You can create as many layers as you want on a form in the Visual Live Bindings designer. and that allows you to group controls together to easily see different parts linking together. And the great thing as well is that once you've done all this visualization of your data, you can literally save an image straight out, and that gives you a good chunk of your documentation about how your UI hooks up to your back-end business logic, which is great. Now, one of the other things that Visual Live Bindings brings us is an amazingly quick way to prototype applications. And one of the big benefits behind this is the prototype bind source. So the tprototype bind source is one component that is really worth getting to know. There's a set of generators that get shipped along with the products that you can use, and these provide sample data. So we can see here on the screen, there's no real data in that screenshot. It's all done through the prototype bind source and the data that you can see there on the right hand side, where the contact name is linked up to the item text, where the contact picture is linked to the item bitmap, and it's kept in sync. And then you can see the other controls that are linked off it, which is the actual the detail view, which we can't see on the screen there, where there's separate controls with data into them. So you can use these generators that give you sample data to help you see how things are going to look as you build it through VCL, through the FM application framework for desktop and for mobile. And that gives you a great chance to get immediate feedback and be very agile in the way that you work and you build an application. And then once you're happy with the way that the screen looks, you then just plumb your live data object into it, and it will pick up, and then using the names that you define for the fields here, so you'd probably rename these something sensible like contact name or contact image and so on, to match up your object, you can then hook it up and have live data showing. So we'll have a look at that as well as we go through. So let's jump into the IDE and let's build our first Visual Live Bindings demo. And I'm going to use and show you one of the first things I was speaking about there, how to actually take a current DB application and add non-normal data aware controls into it. So let's start off with a client data set, and I'm just going to go and, well, let's just load some local data. Let's take the employee table, there we are, and let's add the fields into there. So great, we've got some data to work with. Now the traditional approach is to put down a data source and to connect that to your data set, and then to use things like a DB edit, and let's put a couple of those down, and then tell these that the data source is this data source, and then the fields let's maybe have kind of first name here and last name there. So that's one way to kind of to do this. The what we can do now with the Visual Live Bindings is we can actually add normal controls in. So let's just go find the normal edit and put a couple of these down here. So rather than using the data sources, we can actually bind visually, and we can say, well, let's link this control here, and you can see as you select it, it highlights on the screen. Let's use the first name, and let's put the last name into edit 2. And if we put down a navigator here, and let's just run this application, we can see as we move through that both controls are updating as we navigate through the data. One's data aware, the other one isn't a traditional data aware control, which is kind of cool. So what this means is you can then start taking things like a list view. Let's pop one of those down. Let's add in some columns here. So we can say, well, let's have first name, last name, and maybe that's one of the other. Let's put the phone extension in here. And we can now see that on our list view down here, we can link in first name as well, last name, phone extension, and let's just pop this into report mode so it's easier to view. So there we are, we've now got a non-data aware control. If I select Kim in here, it's not updating because I haven't kept it in sync. Let's just do that. And simply just drag from sync across to the star. And now as we move through, it's now keeping it in sync. So you can have it defined to just list the values and populate some values into a list that is not having to be navigated. Or you can actually say, right, as I select something here, keep it in sync without having to write any code at all. So very, very easy to use those. I want to show you another app that I built earlier. Similar kind of principle. Here, list view, this time a T-image control hooked up, a couple of data-aware controls, and again, same kind of principle, just hook up the image picture to the graphic field and off it goes, and uses that quite happily. Okay, so moving on to the next point is one of the things that we often work with is objects, and objects aren't as easy to get to the screen traditionally as normal data, so we quite often put data into data sets. Now here I want to introduce the prototype bind source. So the prototype bind source is, well, think of it a little bit like a data set. You can double click on it, you can come in here and add fields. So there's a set of field data that you can work with. Now this is example data types, and things like lorem ipsum text, and so on. But these generators provide us with specific fields. Let's just jump back in here. Didn't mean to double click that one in. These different fields, for example here, bitmap 28, and then this one's 28. If we have a look at the next value, 46, and we go back here and have a look at the next value, 46. So a lot of the generators are kept in sync to make it very easy to use them for prototyping data up, and things like contact bitmaps and so on, with different haircuts and facial characteristics for different types of people and so on. And they're kept in contacts, names, you know, the male ones and female ones matched in. Now, these are great to be able to prototype screens up with, and to see how it's going to look, to see how wide you need to set fields to be able to make sure that the right amount of data is visible, to be able to just see that things are aligning out correctly with the columns and so on. Literally, once you've added your generators in, as you see, you can name them as you go, or you can always come back and name them afterwards. You literally just go right click bind, drag the lines across as we've done before, and here I've actually also used the Office to update the header. So at the moment the Office generator is contact titles, so hence we've got software engineer, receptionist, accountant, and so on, and that's just giving us an idea of how things would group together on the screen. Looks pretty decent. But obviously this isn't kind of real data that we want to have a look at. So what we can do on the prototype bind source is use the onCreateAdapter event. And here we can use the list bind source adapter, or there's a few other controls that we can use, like the T object bind source adapter, which you can pass a specific object type in. Here again with the list you say what type of object's going to be in the list, and then you pass it the list. And that's all you need to do. And here we'll see that first name, last name, office, salary, team. These are the names that I've matched up to my generator fields. And then just by doing that name matching, at runtime you can see that I've got my live data for my names, my offices and salaries and everything linked together at runtime, which is pretty cool. So literally just here I've just got some sample random data that's generated and put into a list. So that one line of code is literally all you need to be able to convert a list of objects into something that you can work with on screen. Now that's very, very powerful. As I say, if you imagine fetching stuff from a web service and pulling it back, that's immensely powerful and useful to use. Okay, so I want to show you a couple of other bits with live bindings now. This time let's use a FireMonkey desktop application, and let's pop maybe a list view down, and let's align that over to the left. And pop a prototype bind source down, and here let's add a navigator, let's add some fields in, so let's use the alpha color, and maybe let's have another one, the color, let's use the color name, there we are. So again here we can bind visually, we can hook the alpha color to the item text. Actually no, let's use the color name, that's a bit more friendly. Let's just do something a little bit more different here. Let's put a rectangle down. Now I'm not going to keep this list in sync, but I still want to be able to use the current value from this list. So there's a property here called selected value, and that selected value is defined by the lookup data. So if I say the alpha color is the lookup data here, even though it's not what we're seeing as the selected value on the screen, if I come in here and let's just find the fill color and make that visible, we can say that the selected value will be the fill color. And that should be all we need to do here to link that together. So let's just go ahead and run this application. Let's choose ivory, medium aquamarine, darken rod, sandy brown, blue, yellowy green. We can see that that list is now providing us the data as we go through. And now the navigation here isn't hooked up to the data set to be keeping it in sync, so it's not changing. But whatever this is hooked up to, so say let's link to a new control, maybe a t-edit. We can see here this will navigate through, but this isn't affecting this list because this list has been built from the values in here and it's not worried about things changing as it is at the moment. Hence we can get the selected values still. If we did want to have it in sync, then it would be very easy then just to link the value across to it. There's two different. I just wanted to make sure you saw that distinction between the two different options there. So this is great, for example, filling multiple lists and saying, okay, here's my list of values, go fill these lists up, and then as I select the value from the list, update the master detail type relationship with the value from the selected value here. Okay, so next I want to show you one of the sample projects that actually comes with Brad Studio. So I'm just going to go open project here, and this is all the way down. Actually, let's just go hit Documents, Embarcadero, Studio, 14, Samples, and then in the Object Pascal ones here we've got some live binding samples. And there's a number of them here for you to go and have a look at and play through. This one I want to kind of really draw out is the Live Bindings Circle Fill Color demo. Now, I'm going to run this and then we're going to go back and have a look at what's really kind of happening. So it really is, keep or throw back. If it's green, you can keep it. If it's red, then you can't. So a few you can keep, some you can't. So let's just go bind visually here. Now the length in centimeters is updating this fill color, but the fill color isn't a length in centimeters. So how do we get red or green based on this length in centimeters? So if we jump back here and have a look, the only code in this application is literally to register this converter. So we've got this compute color, which is a value that we put in here, and compute color basically takes a double and returns a T alpha color, and that's all it does. So at runtime we're registering this new converter, and we're using an anonymous method here to say, right, the color is going to be either red or green, and that's defined by literally the length. So if the length is less than 50, then it's red. If it's greater than 50, then you can keep the fish. And that's all we have to do with that. That is it. So very, very easy to go and add additional converters. So you can take a specific object or a specific value type and map how you want it to output accordingly. Now finally, I want to just build a mobile application just to show you that everything is the same over on the mobile side. In fact, let's just do this with we're going to do this with C++ here. FineMonkey mobile application. Now in here, there's a number of templates. There's the Phone Master Detail one, for example, and if you come in here, you'll be able to find that there's the prototype bind source already listed, and that there's master details set up already in place. And this is the obviously the view of the application we saw earlier. And I just want to show you really how beneficial this is to prototyping over on this side. So let's just go File, New Mobile Application here, and pop down a tab control. So the key thing here is when you sit down with a customer, one of the best agile ways to do things is to actually get their immediate feedback on what you're putting together for them, and that helps kind of keep you on track and point you in the right direction. Helps them kind of get what they're thinking out and visualized as well. And again, just going to go and use some of the generators that we have. Maybe let's just add in a Lorem Ipsum text one as well. And let's just go bind visually. Let's just keep these in sync. Let's have the contact name to be the item text. And straight away you're getting a feel for how it's looking on the screen. And you may get that kind of immediate, oh, well, it'd be nice to have the picture up there as well, which we can go and change. And then just onto the second tab, come in here and pop down kind of an image control and hook that up to the large image. Let's put down an edit control here. Put them on the right tab. Always good. Now, the other thing that we can do with the Visual Live bindings, we've seen the navigator, but there's also a set of actions that you can work with. And if we, let's just move this down here, put a toolbar in here, and let's put in a couple of buttons, which we can align to the right. And if we tell these buttons that they're styled up as tool buttons, or actually let's use, even better, let's use the prior tool button up and tool button down, and just using a standard action list, we can add some standard actions, and there's a prior and a next, and we can hook those up to our prototype bind source as the data source. And now on here we can say, look, let's go prior, let's go next. And we won't worry about the kind of on-clicker events and everything for now. Let's just go ahead and test this locally. So I'm just going to use Win32 target. And here I am navigating through my data. And if we come back here, we can see we've got Steve Moore selected. If I go choose Michelle Smith, then I can see Michelle's details and Christine Jones, there we are. So very easy to use these navigation features. And the great thing as well is you can probably just see here that when it's on the first record, it then kind of grays it out. As you move in, it then becomes live, because there is, it's bringing that inherent knowledge of working with the lists straight away in. And that's something you can now use to work with, obviously, your list of objects, but equally if you wanted to swap these over, all you'd need to do is put down maybe the data set that you want to work with, just name these fields up to match, and then literally you can go ahead and select all of these and literally change the data source across to the data set with one click, and swap from prototype data into live fetched data straight away. So very, very flexible and easy to work with and use through your development cycle as well. Okay, I think we're almost out of time for the demos and bits. I just really want to kind of point you back to, obviously for the Visual Live bindings, we've got the streaming.embarcadero.com, and from there, obviously go find the reference links for this session, including this link to some live bindings tutorials that are up on DocWiki, and I definitely would say go and have a play with those. There's also a number of really good Visual Live binding sessions that are kind of longer than this one here on thecoderage.com. So if you go and actually have a look at those, that'll take you through a number of demos from CodeRage 7 onwards. There's 3 or 4 per CodeRage, looking at Visual Live bindings, and they'll take you through some even more advanced techniques around using Visual Live bindings as well. So next week we're on to language features. So do tune back in for that one. So in 2 weeks' time. And I think it's time to just check over any Q&A.